Good afternoon and welcome inside Bojangles Coliseum. It's NASCAR night here as the Charlotte Checkers take on the Hershey Bears. I'm TJ Chillot. At my side, Miles Conrad, PA announcer for the Charlotte Checkers. And welcome inside Checkers Pregame Live. Miles, last night's game, let's start there because I think there's a lot to learn and there's really a lot to dissect. We're not going to get too deep into the woods here, but when you look at last night's 4-3 overtime loss, this is a game that the Charlotte Checkers had a 3-0 lead going into the third period. They squander that lead in the third and they lose the game in overtime. What are some of your initial thoughts when you think about that game that you saw last night?
Well, TJ, I thought it was really a tale of two games, really. The first 30 minutes, the Checkers dominated in their typical Checkers fashion, right? On the board first. Power play and penalty kill looked phenomenal. They got on the board on a power play last night as well and built up a big lead against the Hershey team who we would see in the second game of last night. We would see that push that we knew was going to come, especially after that third goal went in. You knew the Hershey push was going to come, right? And boy, did it ever. And the Checkers defense, they were letting there be a lot of open ice, which Hershey took full advantage of. And obviously we see that, especially going into overtime. Hershey there's a reason they're one of the best teams in the AHL. You cannot let your foot off the gas with this Hershey Bears team if you're up 10-0, really. I mean, this team is that good. I expect to see a big response today.
Yeah, I think, that was one of those games. It was certainly the worst collapse that they've had all season long, and it was one of those games where if maybe they were playing someone else, they might have snuck out with a victory. Maybe they don't allow that third goal in the third period and ultimately win the game 4-2 in overtime or 4-2, by way of an empty net goal or something like that. But because it's Hershey, because they are so well trained, because they are so high skill, they are a team that they're never truly out of it, and that's what the Checkers suffered. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the highlights from last night. We're going to take a look, and the Checkers played pretty darn well for the first, you said it, Miles, 30 minutes. I would even say maybe 40 minutes, and head coach Jordy Kinnear even said in his post-game press conference that he felt the tide starting to turn in that second period, but the Checkers jump out to 3 goals. They would get 2 in the first. The very first one, Justin Sordiff, a shorthanded goal, the team's 10th of the year that leads the American Hockey League. Just a backhand flop shot in on goal, and we're going to talk about that goal specifically here in just a little bit. But then they would get one on the power play. That AHL best power play continues at their strong pace. Trevor Carrick, his 6th goal of the year. John Leonard getting an assist on that goal, as well as Justin Sordiff, who had himself a multiple-point night and was the only Checker with a multiple-point night. And then in the second period, Will Lockwood, his 2nd goal in as many games since returning from injury. And the Checkers really were off to the races from that point on, but it becomes one of those things where the Checkers just broke down in the second half. And I don't want to say that they sat back on their heels a little bit, but I don't think they realized the strength and the comeback in the Bears. And Hershey has only been getting better as of late. They've had some injuries. They've had some guys in and out of the lineup due to call-ups to the Washington Capitals and so on and so forth, but they are still a very good team depth-wise, and the Checkers, unfortunately, just couldn't get it done last night. They lose 4-3 in overtime. The silver lining, however, the Checkers did earn a standings point in the game. They have earned at least a point in every contest against Hershey so far this year. They are 3-0-1-1 against the Bears, but they're looking for another victory here tonight because they lost last night in overtime. They've slipped back into 3rd place in the division with Wilkes-Barre Scranton getting a victory and leapfrogging the Checkers. So now you have Hershey in 1st with Wilkes-Barre Scranton in 2nd, and now Charlotte 1 point behind them in 3rd. So, Miles, let's go ahead and turn our attention to tonight. Taking into account everything that we had last night and everything we saw, what are you thinking they're going to need to do here tonight in order to get this victory?
Well, let's take a step back and look at how the Checkers have played this Hershey team over the last 2 years. Obviously, like you mentioned, this year 3-0-1-1 against Hershey. Last year, the Checkers played Hershey very well. They know this team. They are not intimidated by Hershey in any form. They have played them and matched up with them very well. The problem with Hershey is you have to play, if not a perfect game, 99.9% of a perfect game, or they're going to make you pay, right? And we saw that even with the very few penalties the Checkers gave up yesterday. You see on their power play, man, did Hershey ever look dangerous on the power play. And their puck movement is unbelievable. This team is obviously beatable by the Checkers, and there's just a few things that they need to tweak, and really it's just don't use all your energy in the first period. I mean, that Checkers team was on fire in the first period. They could have been up multiple goals after the first period, but it looked like they almost ran out of gas. I agree with you, TJ. I don't think they were sitting back. I think they were a little bit gassed towards the end of the game. I thought Drieger played phenomenal yesterday. He was big when he needed to be. There were just a couple breakdowns in front of him that allowed the Hershey goals. But I really believe that the Checkers stick to their game plan, continue to be elite on the power play as well as the penalty kill. I think we're going to see a tight game today as well, TJ.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we'll get into our predictions here in a little bit, but I've got a couple of thoughts on what the Checkers need to do in order to get the win. Let's dive into my Hendrick Acura keys to the game. Number one, the Checkers have to fire the puck. We saw last night Clay Stevenson, that first goal from Justin Sordiff, he comes in shorthanded. He gets stood up by the defenseman. He almost doesn't know what to do, so he just kind of throws it on the backhand towards goal, and it was like a beach ball, and it beat Clay Stevenson. It's one of those things where the Checkers stopped doing that throughout halfway of that game, and you saw them eventually lose the shot battle. Hershey works their way up. The Checkers need to fire everything in on goal. I know that they don't have Zach Dalpe in this game. He is always the guy I look to do this because it's just his play style. He will get into the zone and immediately just fire it in on goal. That's just how he is. That's how he plays the game. They don't have him tonight, but someone needs to take up that same mindset. Someone needs to go out there and be the Zach Dalpe in that regard. Just throw everything you can on goal. Whether it's Clay Stevenson in goal again here tonight or Hunter Shepard, that, we'll find out here shortly. That remains to be seen. We haven't seen the lineups for either team just yet, but whichever goaltender it is, you've got Stevenson giving up goals like he did last night. Hunter Shepard in his last start, that was on Tuesday, he only played 2 periods, and he got pulled after giving up 5 goals on 20 shots, which is not like him. I mean, you're talking about the AHL Calder Cup MVP for the last 2 seasons in goal for Hershey, not having a great game, so you got to wonder where his mindset is.
Correct.
Just throw stuff on goal. That's my first key to the game. My second Hendrick Acura key to the game in this one is you've got to play the full 60 minutes. It kind of goes back to what Miles was just talking about, where the writing was on the wall in the second period that, oh man, well, they might not be hanging on. Tonight, this just has to be a wall-to-wall, absolute, on-top and sharp type of game that the Checkers need to play. And there's really not much more than I can say other than that. You just have to be better than Hershey and beat them in every statistic that you can. More shots on goal. You need to beat them in the special teams game once again. You need to make sure you're beating them in the hits. Make sure you're beating them in face-off wins. Do everything you can because, like you said, you could do 99% of the things right, and Hershey can still beat you. So the Checkers need to make sure that they do 100% of the things right here tonight, 100% of the time. And my third, Hendrick Acura, key to the game, more defenseman points. Trevor Carrick with a goal last night. Matt Kierstead has 2 assists in his last 3 games. Mike Benning has 2 assists in his last 3 games. These are defensemen moving the puck, and the Checkers, when they are at their best, they are getting their defensemen involved in the offensive game. So the Checkers need to keep doing that. When they can cycle the puck in low, get it back to the point, keep it at that blue line, get it back down low, get a shot in on goal, getting defensemen points, that means the Checkers are doing a nice job. Cycling, that means they're getting into the zone and attacking well. So once again, those are my Hendrick Acura keys to the game. Number 1, throw everything on net. Number 2, play a full 60 minutes. And number 3, keep getting the defensemen involved and getting those points out of your defensemen. As we take a look at individual players in this one, Miles, who do you got your eye on?
Well, I'm looking at the AHL All-Star, John Leonard, and obviously he showed up last night against the Hershey Bears. You do need an all-star performance from pretty much everybody. I'd love to see this just like we saw in December. So many times John Leonard took over the game, whether it was scoring goals or the beautiful setup passes. He took over games. I expect to see that today. I expect a big game from John Leonard as well. I mean, Trevor Carrick, and I'm really glad you mentioned Mike Benning as well. He's been very underrated on this Checkers team. I thought he played a phenomenal game yesterday, but I'm looking at John Leonard to truly take over this game and really force his way into a Checkers victory.
Yeah, you talk about John Leonard. I mean, we look back to New Year's Eve, that game against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, where he scores 2 goals in 49 seconds, both
Yes.
shorthanded, both on the kill, almost identical goals that he ended up beating the netminder in Lehigh Valley. And yeah, he can take control of a game. He did it in that case, gave the Checkers a nice 2-0 lead. They end up winning that game 6-3. So honestly, a great pick there. And you're right, everybody. If you're an all-star, if you're Trevor Carrick, if you're John Leonard, you gotta play like an all-star.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying they didn't last night, and I know you're not either.
Yep.
But you're going to need some guys to maybe pull a little bit more than their fair share of the weight to get past a Hershey team. My player to watch tonight, Oliver Okuliar. He led the Checkers in goals back in December. He had 7 of them throughout the entire month of December. But so far here in these 2 games in January, I don't see him on the score sheet, and I don't really see him on the ice. I don't recall, saying his name much last night in the activity, so I don't think he was getting into the play as much. I want to see him, get back to the level that we expect from him and that he expects from himself. This is more of a challenge to Oliver Okuliar than it is really a player to watch. I want to challenge him to see if he can get back up there. He's having such a great first season here in the American Hockey League. Here in North America, remember, this is a guy that is still adjusting to the smaller ice rink here in the U.S. versus over in Europe where they have much wider rinks. He's been playing so well. I don't want to see him fall into any kind of divot. I really want to see him to keep that pace up, so I'm keeping my eye on him here tonight. Miles, let's talk score predictions here in this one. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going 3-1 Checkers win here. I think the Checkers jump out to an early lead. We just brought up the John Leonard 2 goals in Lehigh Valley. I can see the Checkers jumping out early. Coach Jordy Kinnear has absolutely lit a fire in that locker room after last night. I expect them to come out blazing. And like you said, there is never a bad shot on goal in this situation against Hershey. Put the puck on net, good things are going to happen. I like a 3-1 win here. I think the Checkers jump out early. You're going to see that typical Hershey pushback that might make it a 1-goal game. I think the Checkers can really take control and really keep their foot on the gas pedal in a 3-1 victory. A massive 2 points it would be as well.
I think that's what everybody wants to see. They want to see the Checkers come out, score maybe 2-3 goals in the first period. I'm playing the odds, though. They did that against Hershey last night, and it didn't work out in their favor. I think this is actually a game where Hershey takes the lead first. Maybe they get a couple of goals. I want to see the Checkers claw their way back and do exactly to Hershey what Hershey did last night, because I do think that win for Hershey is a galvanizing win for a squad.
I agree.
That tells you we are solid. We are built. We are never out of any game. I don't know that the Checkers have been in many contests this year that were like that. I want to see the Checkers, if they do fall into a goal. Look, I'm not saying that I wouldn't take them out 4-0 by the end of the second. Believe you me. But if the Checkers do find themselves in a little bit of a hole tonight, which against a Hershey team, it very well could happen, I want to see them battle back. I don't want to see a situation where Hershey jumps out to a 2-0 lead and the final score ends up being 5-1, because I think between last night's loss and that kind of loss, that would be enough to deflate everybody across the board. I want to see the Checkers just be competitive, whether they're ahead or whether they're trailing in this game.
Yeah, I think just very quickly, I think it was a galvanizing game last night for both teams, because I think it shows the Checkers as well in their locker room, okay, we've seen what first place in the division looks like. Now we know what it takes to be there. And, hey, as Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, says, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And that's what the Checkers need to do tonight.
And honestly, right now, with the way the Checkers are playing, and this will be their 6th game against Hershey, they know what they've got to do to win the division. So it's going to be a good one. I do think the final score is probably going to be a 3-2 Checkers win. It's going to be a 1-goal game no matter what. It might even go into overtime. Our last 2 against Hershey have been 1-goal games, and 3 of our last 4 have gone in overtime. So it's one of those where the Charlotte Checkers really – it's going to be a tough, tight, close game, but I'd like to see them come out on top, and I think they will by a very slim margin. Tonight, it's NASCAR night here at Bojangles Coliseum. Tickets are still available. Head to charlottecheckers.com. We've got an autograph signing happening right here in the connector, not even 50 feet from where we're seated at this desk. There's going to be some drivers out signing autographs for fans. Doors open at 5, so you got a little bit of time. Head to charlottecheckers.com. Get your tickets. Hop in the car. Get on over here. The Charlotte Checkers taking on the Hershey Bears. This is game number 2 of 6 in 9 days. And, oh, by the way, the rest of the games that we've got planned planned for the Charlotte Checkers? Throwback Week. It is coming up. On Tuesday, we have those $1 tickets. Most of them are sold out, so if you haven't jumped on that, head to charlottecheckers.com. You might have some time to just sneak in and get some of those dollar tickets, and if not, just get on out here for Tuesday night's game against the Milwaukee Admirals. Then on Wednesday, dollar beer night as well, presented by our friends at Bud Light. It's one of those games where, hey, if you can get out on a Wednesday night, grab a dollar beer, hang out, watch some good entertainment. It's not going to break the bank. You're going to have a lot of fun here at the Coliseum. And perhaps the biggest game of Throwback Week comes on Saturday. It's Charlotte Clippers night, where the Checkers will be wearing custom Charlotte Clipper-inspired alternate jerseys. Such a good look in the black, gray, and white. Head to charlottecheckers.com, get your tickets, take a look at the jerseys, get on out here to the Bowplex. And, oh, by the way, don't forget, on the 19th, the Checkers are going to finish up their series with Hartford. That's Kids Day. So there is so much coming up. We've got one more against Hershey, 2 against the Milwaukee Admirals, and 2 against Hartford coming up this weekend before a lengthy road trip. The Checkers trying to get some revenge, trying to get their 4th victory over the Hershey Bears this season and stay competitive at the top of the Atlantic Division. For Miles Conrad, I'm TJ Chillot. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you here at the Bowplex.